Welcome to True and Unpolished. Through this podcast, our intention is to uplift, amuse, and inspire you to create more of a life you'll love. Let's get authentic, everybody. Oh my goodness. Do you know who is here with us today? No. Yeah, right. I can't hear you. I'm going to pretend that you said no. Who? And then this is my line. It's Susan, y'all. Susan is back.
Susan is back.
And I haven't seen her since the last time. And her face came up on the Zoom screen, and Mary and I both, like, our smiles like just went up and our faces lit up, because that is the kind of gal you are. You don't even have to be in the room.
Well, thank y'all. It's good to be back.
So today, I think we're going to talk about spiritual practices and finding joy in them. And I think Mare has a story for us. What you got, Mare?
What I wanted to talk about is, spirituality and spiritual practices can become so melancholy, which is a term, a state of mind that I'm very familiar with, but it doesn't have to be. So I wanted Susan to come kind of talk about like having fun in our spiritual practices. I don't know that anybody would call dumpster diving a spiritual practice, but what I think is when we are in community and we are approaching anything that we do with a joyful, lighthearted spirit, then that is a spiritual practice.
Amen.
And I bring up dumpster diving because my now 15-year-old daughter, she was probably 9 at the time. She had decided that she wanted to go dumpster diving. We had read an article and learned that, you could go dumpster diving and find all these cool things that in dumpsters. So I was telling Susan about it, and she was like, oh, that sounds amazing. And I recruited her to go with my 15-year-old or 9-year-old at the time daughter and I. The final results were not that great, but the adventure was amazing. Yeah. And it was because of that lighthearted spirit. And so Macy is in the dumpster walking around because Susan has lifted her up there and then has climbed up there with her. And so the two of them are up in the dumpster walking around, and I am just standing on the sidelines. But this is the thing. This is what she does. She doesn't live on the sidelines. And I swear Macy brings it up at least a few times a year. When are we going to go dumpster diving with, Macy calls her Mommy Susie. She hates the nickname Susie, but I like to call it. And so Macy added the mommy to it.
Susan, is it you that hates the nickname? Okay, you don't like that nickname. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, hate's a strong word.
Right.
Yeah. Strongly dislike. But I just earn the favor with the Mary Caroline as many times as I can. Isn't that right, Mary Caroline?
That is correct.
Nice. Good one. As I was listening to you tell that story, Mary, I was trying to ask myself, would I do that now? Because definitely for the vast majority of my life, the answer would be no. So I'm trying to sit with it and see if I do it. And I was like, maybe I would. And then you said they got up in the dumpster, and I cringed because I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh, darn, I'm not free-spirited enough. So Susan, how do you do that? How do you get to be free-spirited like that?
Well, it's so weird that I wasn't sure what story you're going to tell, Mary. And the story that I kind of wanted to tell was about, as a little child, my parents took me up to Franklin, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we did now I've done it in a bunch of different places, but the gem mining experience, the dirt, you put it in the sieve and the water comes through, and that was revelatory for me. I mean, truly like revealing, like the water coming through and the treasures being revealed. Like that was the best thing I'd ever done. And I think that dumpster diving is like that. You know, maybe it's a treasure, maybe you're going to get tetanus. You're not sure what you're going to get, but at the end of the day, we got a pickle bucket. Van smell like pickles for a really long time. The only thing, minivan is a minivan that smells like pickles, and a mannequin arm.
Oh, these are all very useful things.
Right. And some Christmas lights, which I actually put in my Christmas display.
The dumpster diving story is definitely unpolished. I think that can definitely serve as our unpolished story.
Mary and I were talking about gemstones and beading and crystals and stuff like that as a spiritual practice. And when I was little and did that kind of mining, I kind of fell in love with rocks and stones. And I remember one time in school, my teacher called me a rock hound. And I thought terrible. I was like, ooh, what is that? And all the kids laughed. Susan's a rock hound. But that kid at the end of the day that ended up with a bunch of rocks in my pockets. And my mother used to tell that story, you know, that at the end of the day, she had to really be careful with my pants because there's no telling what was in the pockets. And she was telling that story to my wife, who said, oh, that hasn't changed at all. You have to really Susan's pockets. You can't just throw her jeans in the wash. You really got to check there to see. And that made me feel really good because I think in the middle of those two times in my life, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, just was going through a really hard time of burnout. I was teaching school and I was not doing it in a really balanced way. Was just kind of over functioning and overworking and was doing what would be the most fun job. I was an elementary school drama teacher. But I got really into the grant writing part of it and the administrative part of it. And I kind of lost sight of my fun. And I wasn't having fun, and a lot of energy was going out, but not a lot of energy was coming in. So I started I think I was reading The Artist's Way at that time. I think I knew I was desperate to make a change. And I think in doing that work, I was just reminded to go back and to think about what really gave me a lot of joy as a kid, to kind of uncover that. So I started remembering that I liked rocks and gemstones. And I think there's a part of being an adult that's like, yeah, but that was for being a kid. And that's not for now. You know, that's not for now. Now is about taxes and bills and carpooling and cleaning up a third time. And but I don't know. I think I was at a pretty desperate spot where I just said, I would like to have more fun. I would like life to be more fun. So a woman, Kay Strickland, who is the wife of the man who is the Episcopal priest of my church, taught us this wonderful contemplative arts practice. We did some coloring, but one of the practices she did was beading. And I had, beaded as a child, but I made that first bracelet and was just hooked. And so this combines my love of gemstones, and it's just a nice, gentle, wonderful, fun practice that I didn't get real perfectionistic-y about, that I could just love and enjoy. And I've been doing that ever since. And I think it comes from that place of uncovering stones and getting your hands dirty. And I really kind of attribute a lot of recovery for me, a lot of ceasing of suffering, to the practice of beading and crystal work and stuff like that, just because it's fun and it connects me to that little person who doesn't have so many expectations. Yeah.
The work of becoming self-aware of, uncovering our spirituality, at times it can feel like you're walking through mud because you're bringing up all the stuff you need to get rid of. And it occurs to me that that is why you need to find your fun. You need to find something that's fun and recognize that fun in and of itself is a spiritual practice. Like whatever it is that you like, whatever's fun, and I think you bring up such a great point, Susan, to go back to your childhood and go, when was I happy? Like, look back there. What were you doing? And I'm so grateful to have my boys, because my mom and my sister, my niece were just here, and they said, they're contagious. Like, their fun is just totally contagious, the two of them together. So I think being with them is a good spiritual practice for me.
Well, one of the things that I was just kind of thinking about is, and I'm sure, Susan, you can speak to this too. I'm sure both of you can, but what I was thinking about is, the people who would say, well, I didn't have a happy childhood. I can't even remember my childhood. My childhood was traumatic and horrible. What do these people do? How do they find the joy? I can remember whenever I was little, we had a pond across the street, and we'd go swimming in that pond. We had this concrete table right by the road, far away from my house. And I grew up in a house that was a little chaotic. And so I spent a lot of time kind of alone doing creative practices. And I remember going and digging up clay on the bank of the pond and sitting at that table away from everybody, just by myself. And I would spend hours making stuff out of that clay.
When I work at the in a group therapy setting in the hospital system here, there's a lot of folks that report not either remembering their childhood or not having much happiness, but almost everybody can tell a little story about that. Just, some place usually outside, or some imaginary play activity that they did that made them feel safe. Or even if it's not a memory, it was a wish. I wish I had been, or I always wanted to go fishing, or I always wanted to go to the pet store. Some wish, but to go back to childhood to look for it, because our adult wishes are generally, I wish for no traffic, and I wish for a low power bill, and those wishes are not as fun sometimes. But those wishes, I always wished, to be on the, we didn't have a stream near our house, so streams to me were just, sitting on the bank, a body of water and playing in it. I have a lot of memories of like playing underneath like oak trees in the fall, and like building little houses with twigs and acorns and leaves, and like making little villages. And there have been some in my adult life where I have gotten really overwhelmed with all the adulting, and I've just gone right out into my yard and sat down under a tree and just messed with some acorns for a second.
What you're pointing to is, and what Mary did, and then as you were talking, I remembered there was a stream. It was like this hidden little stream. It was really a ditch. But at the time, it was like this enchanted place where a tree had fallen, and, all this. And so I remembered that. And I think too, what's important, I think, to remember, especially for those of us who had trauma early on, had those hard childhoods, I think that it's important to remember that joy is who we are. So we're not actually uncovering something that we've never had. We're uncovering something we are, that we've been.
Yes.
And so, doing the work of spiritual practice, being committed to bringing up that stuff and getting rid of it is going to uncover your joy naturally, your sense of fun, your sense of adventure. Because I remember seeing, somebody and thinking, I just admired her so much. I wanted to be her because she laughed easily and often, and she like could take a joke, and she just seemed so carefree. And then much later, I realized, after, a decade of uh, self-awareness, spiritual work, I realized I was laughing. Somebody made fun of me. I was laughing, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm her. I did it. I'm her. But I didn't do it by trying to become her. I did it by, uncovering. So joy is who we are, right?
I think that's really true.
Yeah, it was true.
There's a truth.
There's hashtag truth.
Here we go. Truth. I spent some time this weekend with a baby cousin, and just was really struck by how much joy and delight. She's just learned to clap, and she just would clap, and they were excited and want everybody to clap, and had created the cause and effect of I clap and all these grown-ups like smile and clap too. So she would clap and look at us, and just doesn't have to be complicated. It does. In fact, I think when we complicate it, some of the joy, because I definitely, as an adult, I can go to a joy practice and will complicate it with perfectionism or over preparation, and I'll suck all the joy right out of this thing I was going to do, because I must just the right paints and just the right paper to do this thing. And then the day is over, and all I did was buy things on Amazon and didn't paint. So I think
that's what Mary's encouraged me to do, is that letting go of that perfectionist thing. And we're doing an art challenge where we're doing an altered book, and on purpose, like I could hear her in my ear. I could hear her saying, don't do this perfectly, like do it badly. Don't, let it go. And so it was really, a fun thing, just trying not to be good.
Such a great perfectionism or anti-perfectionism teacher. Yeah.
Remember the time that I went around in a group, Susan, and I gave everybody a blank circle to do a mandala, and then I just made a mark on every circle.
Nice.
So that was the day we were practicing radical acceptance.
And I remember being in that group as a co-facilitator, not even a co-facilitator. I was there to document, but I was not actually helping. But
yes,
a lot
of course,
during art therapy sessions, I was like, remember that you're here to document, but I would get right into it. But that was the hardest one, is that there was already a mark on it. I wanted to erase it so bad, or incorporate. You can't even incorporate. You just have to let it be. Over the weekend, my wife and I have just renovated our house, and we were putting out things like all of our tchotchke and knickknacks. And we have this beautiful little ceramic disc that says acceptance, that we bought at a little gift store, and it broke in the move. And she put it on the table broken and slid it so that the pieces didn't go perfectly together. And I was like, please let me fix that.
Yeah. The irony of that.
That's the whole point. I was like, yeah. And I think we're going to probably have a joke where I slide the pieces back together and she slides them away. So she's my teacher too, for sure.
Yes.
Well, that's a spiritual practice too. Looking at our partners and saying, what are you here to teach me? And that is a joyful practice that you guys do together.
Yeah.
So how are we going to create more? Yeah.
So I feel like we've been talking about this the whole time, I feel like we've given lots of ideas. And one of the things that I want to say that I think that has helped me, and is a skill that I teach, that I call the piggy bank skill. So we're always putting in to our piggy bank positive emotional experiences so that we can tolerate the difficult, painful times in our life. And one of the aspects of the skill is that to recognize that joy doesn't come knocking on our door. It's up to us to create it. So, and that's not always the truth. I mean, that's not always true. Sometimes it does appear, but if we sit around waiting for life to make us happy and joyful, then we may be waiting a very long time. And so, so I think just kind of recognizing that life is hard. I think it is hard. And after years of spiritual practice, I'm like, damn it. Yeah. Life is still hard. Yeah. Like I thought it was going to be easier once I was, more evolved or whatever, but it's not. It's hard. And so choosing joy, and that's what, creating more is all about, is making the choice.
And I wanted to jump in with that to say that that's something that I think in the work that you and I did, Mary, together, when we were working together at the mental health center, we learned like that intentional, or Mary taught us that intentional joy, to not wait for the fun fairy to sprinkle fun in your life, that you have to go and find it. And later when I worked at the hospital setting, we would do daily goals and affirmations. And each day the clients in the group and they still do, come up with like a good goal to get them through to the next day. And often people who are coming in with a lot of depression or anxiety, the goals are all very heavy and not any fun. So I'm known as the fun Nazi there, because I say, you gotta have some fun. The chances of us recovering from depression and anxiety without fun in our life they're pretty slim,
non-existent, pretty much.
Yeah, that if our plan is to like push and bully ourselves into feeling better, that's probably not going to happen. So to put some joy in every single day, when I make bracelets, and sometimes there are days that are hard, like you're saying, Mary, that it's all feels like a slog. But if there's like 15 minutes that I can sit down and make a bead bracelet and maybe be still and quiet while I do it, or also maybe watch the Great British Bake Off when I do it, then that's some fun. That's like that sweetness that you always talk about, Mary, allowing that sweetness to be a part of your life. I think it's teens I work with, I think frequently are waiting for fun to be delivered,
right.
Like,
well, and saying yes when fun does knock on your door, because that's another thing. We invited you to go dumpster diving, and most people would be like, hell no, that is not happening, like what Lydia said. But having that spirit of, yes, I would love to do this.
Try. And I think a lot of suffering comes from that thought of, I've tried that, it doesn't work, or here's 9 reasons why that won't work. And sometimes for people who are deeply depressed and anxious, doing the act that used to bring them joy but doesn't bring them joy yet, that's a tremendous commitment to say, if I'm having anhedonia where I just can't feel joy, I'm just going to keep doing the thing over and over again with faith that the joy will return.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's very hard. For me, when I first started doing beads and gemstones, it was in a pretty dark time in my life. And I had a lot of negative, like, this isn't going to be any fun. This is not going to be, and it just slowly over time broke me open.
And I love the way you're saying that. Slowly over time it broke you open, because that's it. Because the joy is in you. We are that. And so it broke it open, that commitment to, okay, I'm going to trust. And for me, when I recently, Susan Marion already knows this, and I know I've told the story, but I want to say that I think it's been very helpful to me while navigating some really tough stuff right now. But I got a tattoo of a lotus, and it was I wanted to do that because I wanted to say, okay, I'm walking through the mud right now. Like it's mucky, but no mud, no lotus. And that is, I did a painting workshop with my friend Stacy Parrish on that. And it stuck with me. And so when I went to get this tattoo, it hurt. It hurt to get a tattoo, but I didn't suffer because I chose the hurt, and reminding myself that there's an end, like the lotus will be finished and I chose it. And that helps, because that's what happens is, well, sometimes we get in this cycle of suffering over our suffering, and it's impossible to get out of that until you decide, okay, if I'm suffering, I'm just going to choose it. Yeah. And I think it's also important as we're wrapping up to just say there are days in moments where, I don't do this. I can't find this within me. It's a hard day. It's a hard year. It's a hard month. So I think that it's important to say that we're not saying these things from on high, like not experiencing this stuff. Like we're saying, because these are the tools we use, like literally the tools we use probably before we started this episode. So it's me too, everybody, me too. And I think this is a time of pain right now, honestly.
Yes.
When you say life is hard, I think part of the reason why it's hard is because this is a hard time to be a human being. And so we got to recognize that, and recognize that every single person that we see is having a hard time. We remembered that in the beginning. In the beginning of all this madness, I, of course, try to unpack that and find out where it began. But what I'm talking about in the beginning of this shutdown pandemic stuff, that was really just the beginning of all kinds of other stuff. But it was, everybody's having a hard time, like just get it. Everybody's having a hard time. And so we got to remember everybody's having a hard time. Yeah. Everybody is.
So I would just say, remind everybody about the challenge again, because and Lydia mentioned it before. We're posting on Mondays. I'll post on Mondays the latest instructions for the challenge, and we're only on the second week, so it is definitely not too late to join it. And that could be something sort of like walking through the mud and potentially fun. So we're doing, some of it's a little murky and muddy, and then the end result we're going for is some fun through that process. So
yeah, and so y'all do it, because Mary, like especially those of you who can't find the fun, do it. Mary is the fun fairy knocking on your door saying, come, let's do this. So just trust her, trust that this is going to be fun. Like, do it just like Susan and her beads, and let's see if it can break you open. What do you got to lose? You're already sad. Thank you for being here, Susan. And
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're grateful for you. You have been listening to True and Unpolished, the podcast. Let's see what happens next.